Hello and welcome to Training the Sensitive Dog, Lyra's Journey. I'm Amy Gardiner and I'm a behaviourist and trainer in the West Midlands in the UK. I have a BSc Honours degree in Applied Animal Behaviour and Training and a National Diploma in Animal Management. I am a provisional member of the Association of Pet Behavioural Counsellors and I am a member of Pet Professional Guild, as well as being a Dog Training College verified trainer. This is Lyra. Yeah. Lyra is a 2-year-old female flat-coated retriever. And she is going to be the topic that we're going to be talking about today, which is how we went from Lyra not enjoying training sessions at all to her starting her trick training, gun dog training, and we've just started to train for hoopers as well, which she's really quite enjoying, aren't you? So we need to go back right to the beginning of the story with Lyra, and it's not something I really publicly talk about, and I don't really like to publicly talk about it, but I think it's important to the story. In late 2018, I lost a puppy. She was poorly and unfortunately passed away. The situation's more complicated than that, but I'm not going to talk about it in this video. She unfortunately passed away, and months later, due to the kindness of people in my breed, which I am so thankful for even today, I brought Lyra home, and she's the star of this video apparently, and no one else is allowed to get in. What are you doing? Hey? You're a good girl, aren't you? Good girl. Gonna settle down? You're kind of getting in the way. Yes, you are. She's gone. So, very quickly it became apparent. She was fine to start with, but very quickly it became apparent she doesn't really enjoy training. And so I kind of left her to her own devices. I mean, she learned the basics like sit and things like that, but in the vast training she just wasn't interested, and she would just freeze and shut down, and she didn't want to do it. So I just left her. I thought it was something maybe she'd grow out of as she grew older, and I focused on what were then my 2 older male flatcoats, and I kind of just left her to it. What have you got, darling? Okay. And time went on, and we got to a year old, and she still really wasn't that interested in training. And every time I try and train her, she'd just shut down, and I would just get frustrated. And it got to the point where she didn't enjoy training, and I didn't really enjoy training her because it was a frustrating experience. And I much preferred the success I enjoyed with my 2 older flatcoats. So one day I was talking to Ruby, who runs this conference, and I told her Lyra doesn't like training, and she's like, well, that's odd. Like, why doesn't she like training? I was like, I'll show you. And I put on a Facebook video to her, and I showed her what happens when Lyra, I do some training with Lyra. Sometimes it takes someone who's just a little bit removed from the situation emotionally to see what's going on. And that is what happened with Ruby. She saw immediately what was happening, and it's something that I hadn't noticed, which doesn't mean I'm a bad person or a bad trainer or anything. I'm just too emotionally close and put too much emotion into the situation to really be able to see clearly. Ruby spotted that she actually didn't like hands very much, and was a little bit worried about them. And of course, you use your hands in training. You have your clicker and you give treats with your hands. And she was finding this experience quite aversive. We started training like that instant, and we'll come to that in a bit. So I'm speculating on what happened, but there was an incident when Lyra was a tiny baby where someone, when she was small and cute and in her sensitive period, someone grabbed her in the park to hug her. And I'm speculating that this happened during a sensitive period and really made her quite worried about hands from that point forward. So I say to a lot of my clients, the past, although it tells us why something has happened, you've got to let it go, basically. It's happened now, and the only thing you can do is move forward. And that's what we did, and I'll go through what I did to kind of train her later on in this webinar. So what is a sensitive dog? When we talk about a sensitive dog, what are we kind of talking about? And you may think it's perhaps a dog that lacks confidence or can't cope with the world, and this isn't really true. Lyra is a very confident dog and copes with a vast array of situations, but what she can't cope with very well is uncertainty, and the uncertainty that something bad may happen. Now, I'm a completely force-free trainer. I've never trained her with any aversives, so she has no reason to suspect that anything terrible was going to happen to her or that she was going to be punished in some way. I don't use that kind of punishment in my training. But what was happening, which I quickly realised, is that the situation and the training sessions were being poisoned by the fact that Lyra really wasn't enjoying hands. She was quite worried about hands. And obviously, again, hands are a big thing in training. You have to treat, you lure your dog with your hands. And over time, she was actually being punished for engaging in training sessions by the fact that she was getting stressed about the hands, which I feel bad about now. But again, you can't dwell on the past. There is only the future. You have to mitigate it, and we did immediately going forward. So a sensitive dog really has an inappropriate stress response to a situation. Lyra's stress response to training, it was inappropriate. There's no reason for it. To her, potentially she may have thought it was reasonable, but in terms of behaviour, it's not a reasonable stress response to be stressed about positive reinforcement training. So a little bit of stress is okay for learning, but too much stress is detrimental to any type of training or learning. And what was happening is her fight, flight, freeze and fall round system was being activated every time we trained, and the one she really defaulted on was freeze. So we got flight, fight, which you can see aggression when a dog gets too stressed, or flight, you find dogs that run, fool around. If you have a dog who does zoomies or rolls around on the floor during a situation, and then Lyra's, which is just to stand there, freeze, and just put your tail between your legs and hope everything goes away. a lot of people try and kind of like hype up their dog in that situation, like, come on, come back to the training. But I've since learned that you just need to remove all pressure from your dog and just stop the training session and come back when they kind of their stress cup is emptied on that. Because a dog that's in that kind of fight, flight, freeze, fall around is a dog that's not really coping with the situation, and we don't want to push a dog who's not coping. So if we got a dog that's sensitive and maybe can't cope with certain situations, and for Lyra it's training, but for other sensitive dogs it may be other things that you know, it may be certain areas, it may be certain situations like going in the car or going to certain parks or anything. Like, I'm just talking about training because that's Lyra's particular advice. What do we do if we've got a dog who struggles in situations like that? And I think the first really important step that we need to do is to change our own mindsets about our dogs. And this is actually really hard to do, especially if you've been training a certain way for, I think I've been training dogs 15 years now. So I've always trained my dogs the same way and it's always been successful, and now I've had to change it quite quickly. But it's important. I got frustrated with Lyra, and that wasn't fair to Lyra. She wasn't doing it deliberately. She was a dog who wasn't coping. So it's really important to stop blaming your dog. Your dog is only struggling with the situation and they can't help it. And it's really important as well, every step, to accept your dog's limitations and to work out what your dog needs, not what you want from the training session. What does your dog need from the training session in order to be able to move forward? So changing that all overnight was very difficult, but she's worth the effort. On that first phone call with Ruby, we did some desensitization work with hands. So I'd put my little hand up and then she'd get a treat, a click and treat, and clickers, yeah. So I'd click and treat. And then we'd start moving her hands around and we were going at her and clicking and treating. We didn't get to that immediately. We started with still hands and worked up to fingers. And by the end of the training session, she was loving hands. I mean, it took longer than one training session. I'll put that out there. Moving forward from this first session, it was time to put in things into the technical side of the training her. In order to allow her to cope. The sessions have become poisoned by the presence of hands, and the fact that Lyra can't cope with any sort of uncertainty in terms of whether or not she's going to be theoretically punished and fail, which she doesn't really cope with that well, and causes this stress response. So I had to change my entire way of training. Despite the fact that I'm force-free anyway and don't use any intentional punishers, I had to go one step further and remove any form of punishment from any training session. That included withholding treats. I also removed the lure. So if I was luring her, I don't do that anymore. Well, I didn't do that to start with. I've started to add it in now. Our journey's not complete, but I've started adding the lure now. But at the beginning, I stopped luring her completely. She didn't like hands, so it seemed counterproductive to use hands to try and lure her into doing a behaviour, which meant everything was free shaped. She wants a tickle. Everything was free shaped. Every behaviour she wanted. Which at the start wasn't very many behaviours. Well, I broke the criteria right down. So for a normal dog, I call them, not say normal dog, but for a dog normally training, we would break down the behaviour we wanted into criteria. For Lyra, I then halved those criteria again, to make sure she never failed. To make sure. I made a high use of jackpots as well. For people who aren't dog trainers, a jackpot is where you are treating your dog and then you have a high value or high quantity of treats for a behaviour that is closer to the end behaviour that you want to see. So I was training Lyra to do 2 paws up on a block and go around the block. Much later, like, I've only just started doing that. So if she moved 1 step, I would give her a reward, but if she moved 2 or more steps, I would give her a higher value reward and more of it, which is the jackpot. So I started every day, made a pledge to myself that every day I was going to train Lyra, and I do it after breakfast, when they've had a relax, and after their breakfast they have a bit of a sleep, and when she wakes up we do the training. And at the beginning it was all free shaping, so I literally had her in front of me and clicked her for doing anything, literally anything, lifting a foot up, wagging her tail, looking at me, everything got rewarded. She could do nothing wrong in those sessions, literally just existing got rewarded. I don't usually use a clicker apart from fiddly behaviours, that's just me. I don't use them very often apart from very refined behaviours. But I have got them back out, and I find that Lyra really responds well to having a very distinctive marker, more than just my voice, a very distinctive marker to say that she's done something well, and she really responded well to that. So I incorporated a clicker into all my training sessions with her. So this is how it started, and I think we got some behaviours, such as paw. Paw was one of the first behaviours that came out. Targeting, and poking various objects around the room. There was no real end goal or end behaviour that I had in mind for this. I just wanted to reward her for kind of just engaging in the session, to be honest. That was almost what it was like. It was just, if you do something, I'm going to reward you. Well done for being engaged. She's bringing me an instruction leaflet. Do you want to bring it to me? And this is another thing, this is a good example. Wow! Well done, Lyra! Well done! So Lyra, on a little bit of a tangent, Lyra is a retriever, and as such has a breed trait that when she finds something that she finds interesting, she will bring it to me, and I always praise her. So this is the paw pods I got from Aldi, the instructions. She's found them on, like, they've come off the table, they've fallen on the floor. She's found them and she's brought them to me. Unfortunately, the praise I've just given her has attracted other things in the room, which were asleep and now are very much awake. Again, as I said, a retriever, who's just not the tripod, likes to bring you things, and Edward has found a paw pod. What you found, Edward? I always encourage this because it has 2 purposes. A, it encourages their breed trait, which is to pick things up and bring them to you. And it really builds Lyra's confidence to find something and bring it, which genetically she's driven to do, and then be rewarded for it. So in these first free shaping lessons, really, yeah, like I said, I was just clicking and treating her for engaging in the session and engaging with me. We started to get some nice behaviours out of that. And then I started to have goals in mind. But I started to break these goals down into much smaller criteria. At the moment, I'm trying to teach her to hold her leg up and walk in a circle, which is very difficult because it involves hands. So we have to go very slowly indeed. It's really important with a sensitive dog that you never use any sort of aversives, or never tell them off, or punish them in any way. Everything has to be rewarded, which may seem counterintuitive when she's crawling all over you when you're trying to talk to a camera. Oh, she wants a tickle. But I want Lyra to have the confidence to come up and ask me that and tell me that she wants to have a tickle. She's come to explore the yoga equipment. Hello. Those are the paw pods. So in these first 3 shaping sessions that I had with Lyra, we kept the criteria really very low, and it worked. She started to engage much better in the sessions. I know I've been joined. This is Edward, not Lyra, and that's where he sleeps, and I'm in his way apparently. So these sessions really worked, and soon, although I kept them in the house to start with, we were starting to do it in our venue, our dog training venue. I started, as she got better with hands, I started to teach her hand targets, which really helped with the sensitivity to the hands. We started gun dog training again. And the thing about gun dog training is sometimes we have large distance retrieves and hunting, and it's really important with such a sensitive dog such as Lyra that we make sure she achieves on every single retrieve, so she can never fail to find the dummy ever, which is a technique used in gun dogs anyway. When we're teaching blind retrieves and things, we always want them to find the dummy, but even on marked retrieves and things, she can never fail. We have to set up each exercise in a way that means she is definitely going to succeed at it, which presents an absolutely huge challenge when it comes to things like directional work and water work and things, where things can, they can make mistakes, but failure is not an option for Lyra. But here's a clip of Lyra. She's just started her gun dog training, and here's a lovely marked retrieve, and you can see such a difference in her body language compared to what she was before, which is she was freezing and slinking around, and you can see how engaged she is with the session from her body language, and how happy she is, because she's a very happy, jovial dog. She's always wagging her tail. She's always happy to see you. The thing about Lyra as well, I find, is she's quite empathetic. She's quite an empath. Obviously, I say I had 2 dogs, 2 male dogs. I unfortunately lost my my oldest male dog in April last year, after a longish illness. And obviously that's been very hard for me. He was my heart dog, and I am not allowed to be upset about it. If I'm upset about it, I have Lyra there in my face. Like, I'm not allowed to be upset about it. She's really in tune with people's feelings. I think that stems from the sensitive her sensitive nature, but obviously there's no science to back that up. So again, we started Hooper's training, because I thought that some kind of training like this would really help her and her confidence. And I picked Hooper's because I've not got the best knees in the world, so agility is out the question. But I love the distance aspect of Hooper's, because I feel like if I'm not there right with her, and she's actually running ahead and making her own decisions, but they're the right decisions, I feel like those can really build her confidence. The other thing I started engaging with, which I touched on a little bit, I started training specifically for tricks. I've always in the past kind of dismissed tricks, as gimmicks, and they don't really play any part in my training. And I never really trained them. I think Jack, my dog who passed away, I think he could speak on command, and he could do a twirly heel, you know, where they go over in front and spin into heel. And I think he could give paw and things, but I never trained any specific tricks. And I met another dog trainer who trains her. She's over in Ireland, and she trains her dogs for tricks. And she kind of inspired me to kind of get into this trick training. It seemed to work really well with her dog. And breaking the tricks down into little achievable criterias for Lyra, and having her achieve every single time we try a new trick, has just built her confidence up, and kind of got her away from training sessions are bad, and bad things are going to happen, and there's going to be hands, and there's going to be failure. Now training session means that we're going to see hands which are associated with good things. We've desensitized her to hands and counter conditioned her to the hands, and also I'm going to succeed and get all the treats. And you know, we can't scientifically say that they find failure aversive in the same way that humans find failure aversive, but it certainly seems to be aversive to Lyra for her to fail. Again, I'm completely force free, so nothing bad has ever happened to her when she has failed. She just seems to find the process of failing quite aversive, and like I said, like if she fails to find a dummy, she will just go back and sit by the car. She will just sit and want to go back in the car, and there's nothing you can do. She just wants to go back in. So it's preventing her getting to that level of stress, to be honest. Poisoned cues. I was going to touch on this. A poisoned cue is a cue which has been. I know if you're a dog trainer, you probably know what a poisoned cue is, but for people that aren't dog trainers and haven't studied the theory of dog training, a poisoned cue is a cue which has had something of an aversive nature attached to it. And thus the dog doesn't want to perform the behavior. A big one in dog training is recall. So your dog hasn't come back, and then the dog comes back to you eventually on your recall cue, and you put them on the lead. So when we're talking about aversives, we're not talking about heavy duty aversives like your prong collars or your e-collars, but even something as simple as just putting them on the lead and they can't go and run off again. They kind of learn that that's aversive, and then they kind of learn that your recall cue means something aversive, and then they don't want to do it again. And that's kind of what happened with the training sessions, in that the presence of hands poisoned the sessions and poisoned all the cues. So what we had to do for quite a lot of behaviors actually was reteach them in a different setting with different cues, which was a particularly interesting endeavor, but it was worth doing because she enjoys training so much now, and you can see from the clips of her training how engaged she is in the process of training and things. Hoopers in particular, I'm not an expert in hoopers by any stretch of the imagination, and I've only just bought some hoops just to play around with, but the fact that the behavior is quite a simple one, where she just goes through a hoop and she gets a reward, and here there's a video of her running through the hoops and getting a reward, which is the ball. Just has really built her up, and she really enjoys engaging in hoopers. We haven't done the barrels yet. She will enjoy that. So where we are now, Lyra is enjoying her training, and this isn't about making a sensitive dog not sensitive, because Lyra is always going to be a sensitive dog, and she is always going to have she will go and find what she finds aversive. She's going to find it aversive, apart from the hands, which she quite enjoys now. So this is, I'm sat in his place, basically. So where we are now is Lyra's increasing confidence, and we're never going to get to the point where she's not sensitive, because that's who she is, and she is a sensitive dog. But what it's really about is changing your own mindset and your own training around your dog's limitations and capabilities. Again, she's got something she shouldn't have, but instead of running to grab it off her, we're going to turn it into something interesting. Lyra May. Lyra May. What you got? No, pick it up. Come on then. Well done. So we're not going to run in and grab it off her. She could destroy it. She's got a paw pod. Good gal. Another thing I forgot to mention before I go is I brought Lyra this. And these have been very good in building her confidence up. Because this is quite an easy one, because it's quite easy to spin. It's just, I can't remember what it is, but I got it from Pets at Home. It's a puzzle toy. Edward's seen that I've got this out now and wants it. Just having the puzzle and being able to like crack it almost is really been quite rewarding for them. And for her particularly, to be able to succeed. We're still quite on the baby games for that. Where she still finds it quite hard to do the pyramid where they smack it around and the trees fall out. And we haven't got onto the high level bone games yet, which Edward does quite easily, but she just can't do it. And again, we've got to keep those criteria quite small and make sure she doesn't fail. But those games have been quite good in building her confidence up. I say building her confidence up. She is a confident dog, but not in certain situations, which is the training and in the face of failure. So it's building up her confidence in those areas, really. And she's much more confident, generally. She was confident before. She's never been an unconfident dog, especially socially. She's quite a socially confident dog. Ted is not a social dog, and Jack wasn't. They were a dog. They didn't really care either if there was a dog or not. They just only cared about smelling things and peeing on things. Lyra really enjoys meeting other dogs that are strangers and engaging in play. Hello again. And back again. Oh, play. You want to tickle? Hello again. So that's where we kind of are at the moment. Starting our gun dog training, starting our hoopers, and really just being much more engaged. And she's gone actually from a dog that I felt was untrainable to actually one of the dogs I find she's really easy to train now. I find her quite easy to train. Now I've kind of clocked what she needs and what she wants, and the thing she finds aversive. I actually find her one of the easiest dogs I've trained. She's gone from one of the hardest dogs I've trained to one of the easiest. And it was just a case of unlocking her secrets, to be honest. It was a case of finding out what clicked for her. And I think a lot of dog training, that's what that's about. And it's about finding what works for you and what works for your dog and what works for you together. There's no need to write off a dog that's too sensitive, especially with force-free methods, which work the best for a dog like Lyra. I think she would melt if she was trained in any other way. But I feel like our journey together has been amazing. I'm just watching it. She's got a buffalo horn, and she's just, again, like I said, she used to not be able to chew out of the house, out of her safe space, which was, she's got a little crate set up with the door open. She used to not be able to chew at all outside of there, and if you can listen, I don't know if you can hear that noise, but that is Lyra chewing on the buffalo horn. And really, I just feel like it's just increased my skills as a trainer, to be honest. And I'm thankful she came to me, even though it was a sad time when she came. I'm glad she came. She's done me good in my training journey, and hopefully I've imparted some of that wisdom that I've got from her to you. I think sometimes you just have to take a step back from training, and sometimes, sometimes it just takes another person to look at the situation and see something that you're missing, which is what Ruby did for me. Like, it's not a sign of incompetence or failure. It's when you're too emotionally attached and you're emotionally invested in the situation, especially the circumstances in which I got her, where I just lost a puppy, and there were lots of emotions around that. Honestly, it was awful. And sometimes it just took that other trainer to just go, look, this is what's going on, and then you get a clearer idea. Isn't it the phrase, if your trainer doesn't have a trainer, get another trainer? Updating your skills are so important, and sometimes it's the really difficult dogs that allow you to do it. Every difficult dog is a blessing, and I'm blessed to have her. Really, I'm rambling about her, but I love her so much. She's wonderful. So that's me rambling for a long time about sensitive dogs. Again, this one was pre-recorded as well, so if you have any questions about me, about Lyra, about our training together, feel free to comment, or you can message me personally if you don't want to comment. I'm an admin on the page for the virtual conference, so I don't know if you can message the page, but I'll probably see it. I just want to say thank you to Ruby for allowing me to come in and asking me to speak. And I think there's been some absolutely excellent trainers, to be honest. This was recorded on Friday, so I've been in and out of the live talks all day today, and there's just some fantastic speakers, and how fabulous that everyone's given their time really to impart their knowledge. I'm definitely going to be watching quite a few of them and adding to my knowledge. So thank you all for listening to my journey with Lyra. I hope you enjoyed it, and I suppose you can, if you follow my page, Perfectly Behaved Pets, to keep an eye on her progress if you were interested in seeing how she goes going forward. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Another lovely day. This is set to go early, so another lovely day of lovely speakers, and I shall hopefully see you in the next conference we do, if Ruby is so inclined. So thank you for listening. It's been lovely talking about our journey and what we've achieved together. So goodbye, everyone.